Really quick before we start, if you haven't already heard, I recently launched some TetraBitGaming merch. For a limited time, use code FREESTICKER to get a free sticker with the purchase of any hat, shirt, or hoodie. So if you're interested, go to TetraBitGaming.com to check it out. Anyways, on to the video! Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Lost Bits right here on TetraBitGaming, the series where we explore the scrapped, unused, and unseen content in video games. In this video, we will again be taking a look at Sonic the Hedgehog 2, only this time the final releases on the SEGA Master System, Game Gear, and Genesis or Mega Drive. So this video is basically a part 2 of my Sonic 2 Lost Bits series, so if you haven't yet watched the first video where I go over the unused and altered content in Sonic 2's prototypes, I highly recommend you do so by clicking on the card right here. And without any further delay, go grab creepy unused prototype Game Gear Sonic. It's time to find some more Lost Bits. So as you probably know, just like with the original Sonic the Hedgehog game, Sonic 2 was also released in 2, or I guess 2.5 different versions. As such, to kick things off, let's have a look at the Master System and Game Gear versions first. Just like the prequel, these versions of the game are similar to the Genesis version, but with a lower resolution, some different zones, as well as some more differences here and there. First up, I just want to address a mistake that I made in my previous video in which I played the wrong unused song. The song which I played, I claimed was unused in the prototypes, but it was actually not in the prototypes, and it is found in the final release in which it goes unused. So if you didn't hear it in the last video, here is just a small snippet of that song. As typical, no one knows for sure where the song was supposed to have been used, but because of their similarity, it is believed that it may have been used as an early theme for the Crystal Egg Zone. And for completion's sake, here is the prototype song that I was supposed to play for you guys in the last video. While this song is used in the prototypes, nothing like it is heard in the final cut. Next up, we have several unused sprites and level tiles. Although most of the assets in the Game Gear version of the game were taken right from the Master System one, some Sonic sprites were altered. One example of this is the bored Sonic animation seen when remaining idle for a while, which was altered in the Game Gear version, leaving these sprites to go ultimately unused. Similarly, there is also an unused Sonic Death sprite that was used in the first Sonic the Hedgehog game. There is also a cut animation of Tails crying and then being happy. It is extremely likely that this was just supposed to be used at the end of the game when Tails is rescued, but for whatever reason, this was cut. Next, we have 2 unused full body sprites of some bosses. Normally, only the head of these Underground Zone and Sky High Zone bosses can be seen, but the entire sprites of both of them are actually found in the game's files. I honestly think it would have been at least a little bit more amusing to see the Sky High Zone boss walk around like this instead. Akin to most classic Sonic games, this game too has some monitors that go unused. First, there is an unused arrow monitor. This would have most likely been used to give the player a checkpoint, just like it did in the prequel to this game. Next are unused monitors with a question mark and a gray sneaker. The question mark monitor is believed to function similarly to the one in the 2-player mode in the Genesis version of the game, which basically just grants the player a random monitor effect. The gray sneaker, on the other hand, is believed to have slowed the player down similarly to the speed down sneakers in Sonic 3's 2-player mode. And you guys know how much I love going slow in a Sonic game. Kind of like that one time they wanted to add a mechanic to Sonic 2 on the Genesis in which Sonic would bonk off a wall if he runs too fast into it. Ah yes, good times. The last unused monitor looks to have an image of Sonic doing what he does best, being a fast blue boy. Although normally unobtainable, this monitor can actually be found obscured in a wall in the Crystal Egg Zone. But just like other Sonic monitors, this one defaults to just giving the player an extra life. And as I mentioned earlier, there are also several unused level tiles left over in the game's files. These are admittedly not as interesting, so I'll quickly just show you some of them here. Now it's time to move on to the Genesis or Mega Drive version of Sonic 2, which at least to me is the one that I always think about when someone mentions Sonic 2. So again, let's first have a look at some of the unused music left out from this game. The first of these is track number 10 in the game's sound test. So yes, it is accessible in the game, but it is unused in normal play. Let's have a listen. This track was in fact supposed to be the one used for the Hidden Palace Zone, a fairly complete zone that was found in earlier prototypes of Sonic 2, but ultimately scrapped from the final release. This song, however, wasn't found in earlier prototypes, where the playable versions of Hidden Palace Zone instead used the track that was later repurposed for use in the Mystic Cave Zone in the 2-player mode. But the fact that the Hidden Palace Zone is still playable in the sound test just reinforces the notion that the level was probably scrapped pretty late into the game's development. The other unused track isn't left over in the game's files, but rather on the official soundtrack album of Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2, composed by Masato Nakamura. Track number 37 on the second disc of the set has a song referred to as STH2, unused song Masa's demo version. This is another version of the Hidden Palace Zone song, but instead of being a looping track, this one transitions to a more proper ending. Some fans believe that this might mean that the unused Hidden Palace Zone song was also planned to have this transition to a more finite ending, perhaps in a cutscene or something. This would make sense, as Hidden Palace Zone was intended to be accessible towards the end of the game after collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds throughout the game's adventure. So maybe it would have served as an alternate ending of sorts as well. Interestingly, when the Hidden Palace Zone was re-added in the 2013 remake of the game, neither of these tracks were used, and instead the original 2-player Mystic Cave Zone track was chosen instead. In Sonic 2's sound test, we can also access several sounds that can't be heard in normal play, and many of them are also unused leftovers from Sonic 1. Let me just quickly go through all of them here. Now, onto some more unused graphics. First up is a Grayscale death frame for Sonic, probably intended to have been used if Sonic died from the result of coming into contact with some considerably hot lava. If you've seen my Lost Bits video on Sonic 1, you might also recognize this sprite from that game as well, in which it also goes unused. Apparently it was also unused in Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, so you can look forward to me talking about this sprite at least 2 more times in those videos as well. Next is an unused animation of Sonic grabbing onto something traveling pretty fast. Aside from being vertical instead of horizontal, this is very similar to the animation used in the Wing Fortress zone when Sonic is holding on to the panels on the side of the ship. Although it's updated and upside down, a similar animation can be seen in Sonic Mania. And next up is a normally unused animation of a laughing Dr. Robotnik sign. The game is coded to use this animation when Sonic loses rings during the Silver Sonic fight in Death Egg Zone. The only problem is, the Death Egg Zone doesn't have any rings, so in turn Sonic never loses rings in this fight, and as such, this animation goes unused. This animation can, however, be used in the 2013 remake of the game when Sonic dies, as well as in the Sonic Jam and 3DS ports if played in the Easy and Ring Keeper mode respectively. It can also be seen in the original game simply by giving Sonic some rings via Debug Mode. And while on the topic of Dr. Dr. Robotnik, the game also contains an unused animation for the fight with him at the end of Chemical Plant Zone. This animation would be of the Doc accidentally dropping some of that dank blue goop on himself. Of course, this makes his beady little eyes grow 10 times as big, for some reason. This animation actually has been hiding in the game's files all the way since the Nick Arcade prototype. Next are some unused animals, a walking turtle as well as Picky the pig, who was seen in Sonic 1. On the Badnik side, there are a few unused frames of Aqua spitting out some oil, and of Valkyrie with its landing gear. There are also several unused variants of the bubble snake seen in Chemical Plant Zone. The variants range from being 1 bubble in length all the way up to 16. In the final game, however, every single encounter with these guys only uses 6 bubbles, leaving the other 15 variants completely unused. Another remnant of the Hidden Palace Zone is an unused icon of the zone meant to be seen in the game's level select screen. With the use of a cheat code, this graphic can be still loaded into the game. Yet more proof that this level was probably ready for release but was scrapped pretty late in development. For the stages, other unused graphics include some light objects for a Chemical Plant Zone, a spring holder for the also unused ball launcher for Oil Ocean Zone, and a turbine fire laser thing meant for Wing Fortress Zone. There is also this weird unused platform that can be accessed with the game's debug mode in Mystic Cave Zone. As you can see, this platform is made of rings. They can't be collected, and Sonic can walk on this platform like any other one. Pretty odd. Next is an unused spinning pole stage hazard for Wing Fortress Zone. It is still coded to hurt Sonic, but it can be destroyed as well. The static monitor that we can often see in Sonic debug modes also makes another unused return. This time, however, if breaking open the monitor, the player will actually take damage. The game also has unused graphics of a door in Aquatic Ruin Zone that would have closed behind the player after passing it, and a sideways pressure stopper from Oil Ocean Zone. In the final release, only the vertical pressure stopper is ever encountered. There is also an unused score tally variant that would have been seen at the end of a zone that only has 1 act. Instead of saying Sonic got through Act 1, 2, or 3, it would have said Sonic got through Zone, which makes sense. However, in the final game, all of the zones with only 1 act completely forego a score tally at the end of the stage. That being said, this can still be seen in these stages if an animal capsule is placed in the stage with the game's debug mode. Sonic 2 also has a ton of unused level chunks from previous prototype builds left over in the game. Like way too many to show all of them, so I'll quickly just show a few of them here as an example. And now it's finally time to talk about Sonic 2's debug mode. Just like in the other 2D Sonic games that I've already covered, this game too contains a debug mode which allows us to place several objects, and more importantly, it allows us to move pretty much wherever we want, even where we aren't normally supposed to. And as you'd come to expect from the other Sonic games I've covered, this can lead to some normally unseen things. Before we get to that stuff though, there are actually 2 more debugging features in Sonic 2 that I haven't seen in the other Sonic games that I've covered thus far. The first of these is another thing I forgot to mention in the prototype video, and it's dubbed as Night Mode. It can be accessed with debug mode enabled and by holding C and pressing start on the level select screen in the Simon Y prototype of Sonic 2. Pretty much all that this night mode does is it places a dark overlay on certain sprite layers. This was most likely just used by the developers to check if sprites were being placed in the correct layer. The other new debugging feature is in the final release, and this one allows us control to move a few things by pressing up or down with a second controller plugged in. For instance, the background cloud layer can be moved up or down in the Wing Fortress Zone. Fun. More interestingly, both the rising ground and lava can be actually controlled towards the end of the Hilltop Zone acts. These are now much less of a threat than they normally are. Another interesting thing that I found here is that the ground and lava actually loop back to the bottom of the level after they reach the top. Why this is, I'm not too sure, but I don't think this would have been visible in normal circumstances. Okay, anyways, back to moving around to see some more normally unseen stuff. As many of you may know, the development of Sonic 2 was pretty rushed, and this can definitely be seen, or rather unseen, just outside of what we can normally see when playing the game. Oftentimes, normally inaccessible rings can be found in several stages. These are mostly the result of just simply being left over from the earlier prototypes where the stage layouts were different. Because these rings are unobtainable normally, this makes getting a perfect score, which requires getting all of the rings in a stage, impossible. And it's not just unobtainable rings that are left over in areas from previous builds either. There are also leftover enemies like the seesaw in Hilltop Zone, and this misplaced air bubble in Aquatic Ruin Zone. We can also see these debug question marks here in Metropolis Zone. These are normally seen in areas with lava, so perhaps at one point there was lava here as well. With debug mode as usual, we can also stray from the normal path and see some areas that seem unfinished. I mean, it makes sense because the developers knew like 99% of players would never find their way down to these places. Also, some things that you can place with debug mode tend to glitch out if you try placing them in an area where their normal sprites aren't normally loaded in yet. Such as this animal capsule, a thing of nightmares. Another neat thing debug mode lets us use in Sonic 2 is easier access to the teleport monitor. This monitor is normally used in the game's 2-player competition mode and will cause Sonic and Tails to swap places. This makes sense in 2-player mode, but in the normal game, not so much. One crazy thing that I came across with this was in the Death Egg Zone. Since you only play as either Sonic or Tails in the stage, the game doesn't really know what to do when the monitor is broken, and it tries to throw you as far right as possible. Thankfully, with debug mode, we can stop on the way, and this lets us walk through the entire level with ease. As you can see, the graphics didn't load properly in the background here, and... seriously, what the hell am I even looking at? I'm guessing similar to the capsule graphics I mentioned earlier, if we get to this area before we are normally supposed to, the normal Death Egg robot sprites aren't loaded properly yet, and as such, we are greeted with Glitch Lad over here. The debug mode in Sonic proves yet again to just be a gift that keeps on giving. And for the last stop of this video, I just want to go over some of the remnants of the zones that were scrapped from the game, which can still be accessed. First up is Unused Zone ID 1, which is an empty level slot which was believed to originally contain Labyrinth Zone in an earlier prototype. This stage is essentially just an empty, objectless version of Emerald Hill Zone Act 1. What's odd is that for some reason, even though we are playing as Sonic, the name Miles and his picture are used in the lives counter instead. In a similar fashion, next up are the remnants of Wood Zone, a famous zone that was scrapped from the game. Again, this is an objectless Act 1 of Emerald Hill Zone, but now with Wood Zone's palette, messed up collision, and Metropolis Zone's music. Again, for whatever reason, the lives counter is changed, but this time the Tails nickname is used instead. Next is Unused Zone ID 3, which is almost identical to the first one, but here Oil Ocean music is used and the Badnik sprites from Metropolis and Emerald Hill Zone are loaded. This unused zone slot is believed to have been originally used by the unused zone known as Dust Hill Zone. And lastly, we have remnants of the Hidden Palace Zone. Unfortunately, as you can see, this hot trash is nothing like the cool unused version of the zone that can be accessed in the earlier prototypes of Sonic 2. This version does still use the proper collision from the prototypes, so it's playable. But why someone would want to look at this for more than 2 seconds is beyond me. And with that concludes this second part of my Sonic 2 Lost Bits, and I hope you enjoyed it. I know a lot of you have requested this game for a while now, so I hope it was worth the wait. Again, if you haven't checked out the first video where I cover the Sonic 2 prototypes, be sure to do so. And if you're new here and want to learn about more unused content and other games, be sure to check out more of my Lost Bits series by using the card right here. Anyways, as always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to let me know with a like, and also comment down below what other games you would like to see me make a Lost Bits video on next. And if you would like to stay even more up to date with me and the channel, be sure to subscribe here and also follow me over on my other social media things, which will all be linked in the description below. But as always guys, thank you all so much for watching today and for all of your amazing support, and I will see you in a bit.